Hey guys, thanks for having us. I was going to start by thanking everybody, but Flynn already did. But thanks, Flynn, for having us here. Thanks for the sponsors too, Tractor Design School and Campaign Monitor. We're going to start. I was going to get Sean to give you a brief overview of how Pool started and why he started it, and then we'll try and get into addressing the topic, I suppose. So.
Fancy pants iPad and my scribblings. Yeah, so thanks everybody for coming. It's an interesting thing to be asked to do a talk like this, and because you're just going about doing what you do, so to have to sort of take time out and actually figure out what the hell it is that we do is an interesting process. Why? I guess the what and the why. I didn't really have a concept of a collective at all when we first started. It's been going it's probably in its fifth year now. I guess I was a photographer that had been with many agencies over many years, and at that point had my own producer and had my own studio and kind of hung out by myself, as many photographers do. So I was always thinking, wouldn't it be great if I could sort of turn my space into somewhere that people just dropped in to and showed stuff, and because that's really the genesis of the idea of Pool. So it was then Simon Harson that suggested, it's like, well, why don't you make a production company / agency with that as its basis? So that's essentially what we did. So the way we run it is the photographers basically control the joint, which is fairly scary. So the lunatics running the asylum. And then we bring in our producers and all the staff that we need to facilitate the day-to-day and our special projects and stuff like that. So I guess just to backtrack a little bit, the why, and also on the topic of why we're here and the relevance issue, I think what I was discovering or realising where I was at the time is if I was to keep doing what I was doing and sort of over and over, then the value of my currency, or me as a currency, would ultimately diminish. And especially in this market, I think as you kind of get older and your hair gets a bit greyer, then you for some reason you sort of make way for the younger ones coming through, and I don't. It doesn't really happen in Europe or the States. I think I'm getting better, but it's something that I wasn't going to fight. So I thought, well, what I need to do is to bring some young blood through, and I guess the way that it works is that we have some more experienced guys like Ingvar there and Simon and myself, and then we have Danny and Chris and Juliet, who are the younger ones coming through. So we can open doors for them, and we can create opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have had. And in return, they bring this youthful enthusiasm and vitality that we get to feed off. So it's a real, I guess that again is the underlying philosophy behind the whole thing. It's really wanting to share, and it's the sharing of our ideas and our resources, our knowledge, which then sort of creates something much bigger and sort of better than anything I could do by myself. We'll talk a bit more about specific stuff, but yeah, I guess that was really it's that whole like minds contributing to each other, so you're contributing to other people and you're allowing other people to contribute to you, which is a fairly big thing, and it's harder than you think. So it's also about motivating each other and supporting each other. So it's not all rosy. It's like, you know, sometimes you get kicked up the arse, or you need to kick someone up the arse. It's like you're only as good as the group. So it's really if everybody is winning individually, then the collective is winning, and then the collective supports back to the individual, and so it goes. It's kind of that sort of organism and that's kind of how it feeds, and that's its strength. And I guess we'll talk a little about that being the weakness in some ways as well. I think that's about enough.
We're
of an
actually going to get a
introduction.
ball or something. We're going to like throw it to each other when it was our turn to talk.
Yeah.
Like Sean said, it's difficult to try to put some sense into what it is we're doing when you're doing it, especially since the way pool started is now much different today than what it was as an idea when we first started. It's something that's sort of grown organically and continues to grow organically, and a lot of the time we don't really know what's going to happen the next day or how it's going to run. It hasn't really been formed with a business plan or a business model as such. It's something that's grown on its own in a strange kind of way. So when Creative Mornings came to us with the topic for today's chat, we had to actually sit down and try to work out what it is that we do so that we could try to explain it and perhaps address the topic. The topic also made us confront how what we do as a collective allows us to stay relevant. And I think the way we do that is that we create a lot of stuff that's not commercial. So that's a lot of difficulty for artists, is to find ways to create personal work. So what we do as a collective, I suppose, is feed the commercial back into the personal and then feed it back around again. So I guess the first thing to address is what's a collective. And it's something we ask ourselves each day. But as a basic premise, it's a community of like-minded individuals. It's communal. Communal in the sense that the individual creative projects are produced by the collective using joint resources. It's also communal in the sharing of ideas, inspiration, support, fellowship and knowledge. A collective may have none of the limitations of an agency or a company protocol to adhere to. However, like a company, the collective has to make some profit. At least we try to at Pool. So it still operates on a commercial model. So I suppose it's very much like a farmers collective in a sense, in that we pull all our resources together from the commercial work, and we use that to feed back into the personal, so that we can create things like the app and the magazine that we do, and we go from there. A friend pointed out something to me that was really cool when we were talking about what we do as a collective and how it works. She basically said that Pool has, it's sort of based on the analogy of the farmers collective, so the Pool's got 6 cows, and I'm sure the guys are cool with that analogy for now. The cows produce milk, so let's think of the milk as creative output. Each cow's milk is sold to particular clients. The collective keeps some milk from all 6 cows and combines it to make cheese. The cheese is lovingly handcrafted of artisan quality and suitably aged under perfect conditions. When ready, this cheese is given away to agencies and passers-by. The agencies love the cheese and come back to buy more of the amazing milk that made the cheese, or they come on board in some way to help make the cheese. That would be sponsorship. The passers-by start to talk to others about this amazing place called Pool and their amazing cheese. More people taste the cheese, and soon hundreds of people have heard about the Pool's great dairy products, and they all want to taste. So that's a bit silly, but it kind of sums up how it works.
Yogurt is a completely different story.
Yeah, and the sour cream too.
Yeah.
So we're pretty much a commercial enterprise that directly funds artistic projects, not simply by providing money, but providing the means to produce the art, edit the art, showcase the art, exhibit the art, and develop the art. So our particular example, that's either through exhibitions or publications, and I mentioned the app before, which we've just produced our first edition of. which is just a platform to produce the work. Because once you've actually found a means to create some personal work, the next challenge, if you're an artist, is to find somewhere that you can display it. How do you get it out there? Where do you publish it? Do you stick it on a blog? Or, is there a better way of doing it? Can you produce an app that's going to reach a massive audience, or can you publish a massive magazine? Those sorts of things take money, and they're often difficult to do them as an individual. So again, we come back to the idea of working as a group so that you can feed into group projects and individual projects that can be shared on a group basis.
Which is what allows us to stay relevant, because it's that continual evolving and with 6, 7 heads that are always out there and always looking at new stuff, and sort of a new idea comes in, and it's like, that's great, let's do it. So we're not just targeting one market, which is advertising, design, or whatever, commercial photography or commercial imagery or whatever it is. We're looking at other ways. We're looking at how we can turn around 180 degrees maybe and find something that the general public would be interested in. So it's like building a brand, creating a brand, and building the brand such that it becomes more relevant in more areas, rather than just being limited to the one sort of traditional area. So that's something that we benefit from. And we were talking about it yesterday. I don't know if we actually do benefit from it, but it's fun to do.
Look at the idea is it becomes a brand in and of itself when you do that, so that people will come back to that. So that once people start to know about Pool and what we do, then you've always got that sort of platform to work on. So that feeds back into what you do commercially, because the clients that we work with commercially will start to notice the things that we're doing outside of the commercial realm, which will then sort of feed back in. Well, that's the theory anyway. We're figuring it out whether it works.
It's like a marketing tool in itself.
Pretty much.
It's creating the artistic, pushing the artistic side, which we're all into. So you guys that are designers and or work in the business, you're interested in what photographers do personally. That's rather than just seeing all of the same kind of commercial stuff that they do. That's how you get inspired as well. So that's really what we aim to do, and to create vehicles or excuses for that work, and then to support and push and kick each other to make sure it happens.
Yeah, but it still needs to have a structure. So when it was first founded, the idea, it was basically, like Sean said, we've been working with a lot of agents and reps. Let's start our own thing, but that's one thing, but it's still got to function as a commercial entity. So a lot of the work we do are like read out the group of clients that we've worked on, and a lot of the work that we've done is up on the board there. We still have to get through the day-to-day, so there still needs to be a structure in place for the artists that are at Pool to be able to produce their commercial work. So that's the first thing. So once that's in place, then you can start to feed into the other stuff. So that structure that you've set up, that would, in a traditional agency or a repping company or a production company, would just be there to service the commercial work. That structure then also is there to service the personal work. So it's the things are interchangeable, so that there's not really a defined line between what is the commercial work and what is the personal work. Obviously there is when you're doing it, but the same resources are used across both platforms. So I wrote a little bit here about why would somebody want to, or why would an artist or a photographer or a director want to be part of a collective. And especially if you're starting out, there's a number of ways you can go, but most of them will usually sort of go to or gravitate towards joining an agency, or seeking a rep, or teaming up with a producer or a production company, like I just said, or all of those things. And that's sort of been a successful model for many years. And it's especially attractive to younger creatives because, coming on board to those sorts of companies, you sort of buy into the reputation of an existing, agent or rep who will then push your wares to the client. But the limitation within that model is that the sole focus of those companies or organisations or agencies, call them what you will, is to make money through the production of commercial work, which is usually done by promoting the previous batch of commercial work that they've just completed. And that's in most instances. And their sole focus is pretty much to promote your paid commercial work with no sort of scope to develop your personal stuff. I'm sure there's examples outside of that, that agents or reps or that help with that work, but they're usually exceptions to the rule. So the other thing is, how do you go about getting an agent or a rep to support a personal exhibition or a book publication? we recently, Ingvar just had an exhibition, or is still going, at the National Portrait Gallery, and you know, that was a big endeavour for him to get it set up, get it organised. We didn't necessarily throw a heap of resources at it, but, you know, in certain ways we helped to back him on it. We actually went down, we actually made a documentary about the exhibition, and, you know, Qantas magazine have picked it up and they're going to put it in the iPad app, which is promotion for Ingvar. So we had resources to be able to go do that, shoot something like that, cut it together, put it out there, and then someone else has picked it up, which in a traditional sort of structure that probably wouldn't happen so often. Sure.
No, that's good. I'm
So as an ad photographer or a photographer, any note, or a director, you don't often get an opportunity for your own voice to come out. And well, most instances you just don't have the money to put into, you know, getting projects made. So this is even less so when you're an individual and just sort of strictly working with a production service or a rep service. So for us, the collective works because the individuals in the collective all have a similar aim and drive, which is to create their own art. So the collective, in theory, and I don't want to try to make this too sort of structured, makes for a successful business for the individual who gets to be an artist, and for the brand, which is promoted through the artist's work. So we've got this concept of art and commerce and how they cross over. It's a hard sell, but the creative autonomy comes from profits of the brand's commercial work, fueling independent artistic projects, which is what we do. It's difficult to do as an individual, and most creatives will find that the traditional production company /rep/agent won't get involved at the level you need to get your personal projects out to the widest possible audience. So distribution's another key advantage of the collective method. Once you've created the work, you know, how do you get it out there in front of the widest audience? And when you're working with a group of people collectively that have experience in the industry for 20 years, each person has their own contacts, their own people they've worked with before, their own, you know, ways that they've done things. And, you know, it can sometimes be something as simple as just a shared knowledge where everyone gets together and they say, well, you should talk to this person, and that person comes on board in some capacity, and then something evolves out of that. So in a way, when we were saying that the whole process is evolving, it kind of is, because we don't, you know, one day we don't know what's going to happen the next day with whether we're going to do a publication or what we're going to do with the work that we produce. But I guess the way we see it working is that by continually producing good quality work of our own and being able to get it out there is the way in which that we stay relevant. And, you know, if we go to see a client with our work most of the time, especially if we approach an advertising agency, 9 times out of 10 that they will say, where's your work? You know, they don't want to see your latest Coke ad. They want to see what you're doing outside of that. They want to see what cool shit you've been shooting, you know, and does it interest them? They want to see what's inside, what your personal stuff is. It happens all the time. A lot of the time, photographers get so caught up in sort of doing the commercial stuff and trying to sell their commercial stuff that they forget, or they just don't have the time to put into the personal side. But what we find is that in our market, it's the personal stuff and the stuff that you're doing outside of what you do commercially that's of most interest to people. And in a way, I suppose the foundation of the Pool Collective was about giving an opportunity for everyone to produce really interesting work outside of that realm, and having a resource and a facility in which to do it. You know, we've got our own studio, all our own equipment. I mean, a lot of that stuff is really expensive and hard to come by. But if you group together as a whole, it all becomes a lot more easier.
Yeah, and we're also, you know, obviously the transition, you know, media's changed, you know, equipment's changed, so, you know, you really got to stay on top of that, and that's, if you're doing that as a group too, I think that makes it much easier. So each person might develop a different skill set and then be able to share that with the next person. You know, we're now sort of shooting a lot more film kind of stuff, or, you know, moving image kind of thing. So, you know, looking at content again for, you know, again, the whole staying relevant thing and moving with the times, and not just shooting for magazines that don't exist anymore. You know, we've got to continually, you know, keep moving in that way. So that's, you know, I guess that's another advantage. I want to hear some of the disadvantages.
Yeah, there's a lot of disadvantages in the collective.
Yeah.
Look, when you get 6 creatives together, they're not always going to agree on most things. Actually, they don't really agree on anything most of the time.
Democracy's great in theory.
It is, yeah. I guess, look, see, the way the creative works is not like a traditional agency in any way at all, other than the fact that the structure's in place to function like a traditional agency. But, you know, for instance, Juliette Taylor's just joined us as of last month, and she's pretty much the first person that's come on board in quite a while. Ingvar was the last person, which was a couple of years ago now. There's not really there's a few reasons for that. One of them obviously is that as a collective you can't be too big. You know, once you become bigger than like 6 or 7 people, you pretty much become a company, and the structure will have to probably change dramatically. But there's also it's a shared place. So if someone else is coming on board, everyone needs to sort of be in some kind of agreement that that's the right person for what we're doing, and they're going to bring something to the mix. It's not like a production company or a rep who would just seek talent to bring on board because they can extract some money out of them. It's got to work for the whole, and the whole is another group of creatives really that are working together. So
that's part of the I guess the structure of Pool when it started was that it sort of took the best bits of what agencies did, and we sort of took that on, and the stuff that we didn't like and didn't work, we didn't take that on. So we weren't interested in making like a stable of 20 photographers that overlapped all over the place. We're kind of very specific in who we chose, and it's like there can be an overlap because I think it's good to have some sort of healthy competition. We still need that within the group, but we don't want 2 people sort of vying for the same jobs all the time, or, you know, doing the same thing.
Or getting in punch-ups and shit like that.
Especially with Ingvar, his second Dan black belt.
Yeah, don't mess with that. So yeah, look, there's more advantages than disadvantages, but there's a lot of, it's like any other process you work through in life. There's always going to be problems that arise, and, you know, working democratically in a process like this that involves a lot of commerce is actually not that easy. Sometimes you do need to go back to a traditional structure where someone takes over, which usually does happen from time to time, and sometimes it changes who that person is on whatever it is that you're doing. So
there is a line almost though. It's like when you talk about the commercial stuff, then someone like Cam in his, you know, past role as executive producer or whatever, he does have to kind of go, this is, you know, the way we're doing it. Obviously the photographer knows how they want to do things, but from the business sense, you can't have, you know, the lunatics run the thing the whole time. So it's more we get involved when it's more the art side, and we come up with ideas and how we're going to do stuff, and then take it to our production guys and say, this is what we want to do. Can you make that happen, please? Yeah.
It's kind of limitless too where it can go and what you can do with it when you work in a collective. There's a lot of decisions you can take. And I guess, look, it's not like this sort of communist ideal. We are trying to actually make it function as a business and try to make money so that we can pump it back into the stuff that we like to do. Because at the end of the day, we're all in it because we enjoy what we do. We love what we do. I mean, when I was 19, my decision was I'm never going to do anything I don't want to do. I have to absolutely love it, otherwise I don't want to do it. If I have that feeling in the morning when I get out of bed that I don't want to go to what it is that I'm doing, I don't want to have that ever. And I've never had that, thankfully. So I guess we all have that at Pool, and we all feel that. So we're all into what we do. But, you know, it's also about a giving back. We give a lot back to, you know, the people that are coming through. You know, we have a thing we call the Pool Grant that Sean started 3 years ago now. So I think it's coming up to its 4th year. And look, that's not something. It's not like the UN have told us that we need to give away a certain amount of cash, the way they do with governments. We've decided that, you know, this is a good project to do. So we give $10,000 to a young photographer to come up with a project of their own, and just to go off and shoot it. So I mean, that's another initiative, I suppose, for Pool. But in a way, it's also a way that people get to know Pool outside of the normal realms. And I suppose that's another advantage of working creatively as a collective and not in a traditional structure. And I can only really revert to examples of image makers and people like us, because that's what we're in that, you know, a traditional agency or production company pretty much only has a knowledge range, you know, people know about them in the industry. So you get people outside of advertising probably wouldn't have heard of them. So our aim for Pool is to sort of move outside of that, so that what we do actually crosses over into other realms, so that, you know, people that aren't in advertising, that might just have a love of photography or might just be into art or other things, will know about what Pool do, and it feeds back in that way. So that we're sort of not so insular in that, you know, we're all just working in advertising with, you know, art directors and, you know, that whole clique. It's sort of more than that. It's taking it outside of that, so that there's a whole other world out there of, you know, punters, as Sean likes to call them, that, you know, will be interested in what it is that we do and feed into the stuff that we create for them.
Which is, you know, coming back to the topic is, you know, the whole relevance thing, you know, how to stay relevant. So if, I think as that sort of collective model, and as from the very beginning, I never knew what a collective was. It was just, that's why it was called Pool in the beginning.
We still don't know what a collective is.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a buzzword at the moment.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we called it Pool, and it was the pool of talent and the pool of this and the pool of that, and that's why it was Pool. And we've got a pool, at the office.
At the studio.
Okay, that's why. That's why we post-rationalised all the other shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's to me is why you have, you know, where the relevance comes from, and the advantages of that way of working, I suppose, and doing a little bit of research on the topic, and looking at other collectives. Like in the last couple of days, there's a history of arts collectives, you know, for, you know, 10, 20 years, and it's very successful, and I guess for all the same reasons that we've talked about, and different ones.
Yeah. I guess we take it to that commercial level as well, so it's almost like a commercial collective as well.
Yeah.
So that's where I guess some of the difficulties come in trying to incorporate that. You know, it's not really a traditional arts collective. It's kind of still a commercial business is trying to operate as a collective or a democratic process, which is sometimes tricky. But yes.
How do you, on the issue of the commercial versus artistic, and then also the commerce?
How do we sleep at night?
How do you maintain that it's fair? Like, how do you maintain that it's not always one person going out to bring home the bread and butter to keep everyone else's artistic works going?
It's kind of sorts itself out. You know, it's everybody needs to keep a certain level up, you know, to keep up. And one of the advantages of working in that environment of a collective of people that, as Sean said, sort of are competing in the same industry, is that, you know, naturally people are competitive as well. So they see what everybody else is doing, and they bring their game up. So they bring it up to a new level. So it feeds into itself in a way. So that it does sort of organically work itself out. It's not like something that needs to be managed. You know, it's almost like a free market economy type thing. You just sort of let it flow and run, and you know, the human nature will come through, and, you know, everyone will sort of step up. I don't want to use the word collectively again, but everyone will sort of step up when they see what everybody else is doing, and kind of flows like that.
Plus, you know, if somebody's obviously hasn't worked for a while, or they're struggling in the way, it's
we
like,
cut them.
let them hang for a while. And then, but we've sort of have suggested things and say, well, you should be shooting this. I mean, there's usually, you know, you can find maybe they're not really shooting what they're really great at. So we can go, well, shoot this, and actively encourage them to spend the time that not shooting to improve their skills in that area. And
there's a lot of people. Yeah, a lot of people don't know what they're good at, and sometimes someone else has to sort of, you know, take someone to tell them that. And
then that picks them up. You know, they actually do start earning more money for themselves and contributing as well. So that's how it actually works as well. But it is a good point, and that can be a downfall in that system. Is that if you do feel like you're the only one, you know, bringing money in, if you're the only money cow, and then you're funding everyone else's project, then that would be that wouldn't work.
It hasn't really happened so far. It's been more about, you know, a debate about who's doing more effort into doing the other stuff, you know, rather than that guy's not bringing in enough money. It's been more about, you know, I'm doing too much work on this iPad app, you know, and everyone else needs to step up a bit. That's the only area so far that there's been like that sort of thing to work out. But you know, like you do need someone to step up every now and again and drive a particular thing, and that will sort itself out organically as well.
Or you into questions?
Yes, why not? I think it's flowing.
How does it work on the money side of things? Like, do you all contribute a set amount of money?
We just keep it all to one side and we give people pocket money every now and again.
That's your job, right?
Yeah. Anyways, no. Look, we tried a few structures. It was again, you know, saying what we said before, you know, not knowing how it was going to evolve and how it was going to play out. We had to try a lot of different things. So, you know, a lot of the reasons behind why Sean and Simon talked about starting something like Pool was probably a dissatisfaction with working in production companies or repping agencies, in that they would just sort of have no control over their work, especially commercially. And a production company or a rep would pretty much just take over a project and they would run it, and then they would sort of keep all the profit at the end, and the artist would just get their fee at the end. So there was a lot of that involved in the starting of it. So Pool started out with a utopian vision of trying to have a production service that would sort of work pretty much for the photographer, and at the end of the day then the profits would be dealt with in a certain way. When we started to get into the process of doing it, we discovered that was probably a recipe for disaster, because you know, you still need to function and run as a business and make sure that things get paid for, you know, like the space you're working in, all the gear, and like there's a lot of outgoings that need to be covered. So you know, we found quite quickly that you do need to bring in a structure so that things get paid for and that the place can run. And then also you do need to have the money available to put into the projects that you want to do, because they're not always, you know, we started looking at doing an iPad app a few years ago, and you know, it was like the Wild West. You start to talk to designers, and it's because of the new technology, everyone wants to get paid like tens of thousands of dollars to try to put something together because it's some mysterious thing, you know. But even now, you know, even if we're collaborating with different designers, it's still an expensive process and a time-consuming process to put together something as elaborate as the iPad app that we put together, that we've committed to doing quarterly. So there's that needs to be considered as well as part of the process. So
We did our Blow Up magazine, and we had the exhibition that accompanied that, and so we booked we created a gallery down at Lady Macquarie's chair there by the Botanical Gardens.
yeah, we went a bit crazy.
That
with
wasn't a cheap exercise.
No.
That was like almost our first and last.
Yeah. It was one of those things you discover during the process. You know, it just, something gets big and bigger, and then you just kind of lose control of it, and you just have to go with it. So yeah.
How much of it's trust, and how much of it's actually like bringing contracts and that sort of thing, like with the guys that work at Pool?
All of it.
Yeah, there are no contracts.
No contracts.
We don't have any contracts. Everything's transparent. If you want to come and, you know, anyone can come and look at, well, not anyone, but, you know, the guys, the guys can come and, you know,
Yeah.
check it out. It's all, you know, the same sort of profit and loss stuff that you would do in any business or any other agency. We still run it that way. Yeah, but yeah, definitely trust. We actually like each other. You know, there's, yeah, you know, and it's, and that's sort of coming back to the point of, you know, if people are falling away and not doing enough, I would hate for somebody to leave Pool. You know, it's inevitable. It might happen one day, but it's like a family to me. You know, so it's, you really do care. I do anyway.
I care. Do you want to ask about my awards, my various awards? No?
I want to know about your awards, Cameron.
I actually don't have any.
Public.
Not that I can think of anyway. I'll work on it.
You'd have been public speaking award after today.
Yeah.
Yeah. Paul can be your award.
Yeah. Yes.
Is there anything that any of you want to do to sort of thinking that you can't do a collective? Are you restricted in any way?
Of course, you're always restricted by the money that you have to do anything, I suppose, in life. I suppose if you had a big pool of cash, you could just run wild and create all kinds of amazing things. But
Yeah, I don't think so.
you need to sort of prioritise with where you want to go and make sure that you can sort of make it work financially, I suppose. And yeah, there's many things, you know, that you'd like to do that you don't get an opportunity because there is only so much money behind things, you know. You can always do things better.
But it is maintaining that balance between, you know, if we did have 20 or 30 people in the collective, obviously then we would have way more money and we could do massive things. But would that really work? I don't know that it would. So yeah, it's just, you know, everything's a compromise, really. It'd be great to have, yeah, loads of cash and just make books all the time and do stuff like that. But then we probably wouldn't need, I don't know, we're talking about winning the lottery then. I don't know that the changing of the industry and the business is such that, you know, you are looking for different ways, and not just of making money, but just generally to be satisfied and to have fun with your life. And it's, you know, I don't see that there's a limit really. There's no limit for any of us here.
Yeah.
You know, actually.
You just got to strive to keep producing good work. And I suppose coming back to that other question about how, you know, everyone pepping each other up, it's important because, you know, the whole question about staying relevant in a rapidly changing universe, whatever, I can't remember the topic straight away off the top of my head, is, you know, that's what we're up against. You know, we're working with a lot of clients who are devaluing what we do because everything pretty much these days is given away for free, you know. On YouTube and Instagram, and, you know, the photographic image has sort of been devalued a lot lately, and trying to get people to see value in a photographic image is becoming tougher and tougher, especially, you know, corporations and clients that you do work with. They just think everything's given away, and, you know, why do I need to pay for that anymore, because I can just get it on YouTube and there's some kid in Iowa that can shoot some shit that's really interesting, and we'll just copy that and we'll put our brand on it. So we're kind of working up against that in a way. So
we go against that, and we set the bar as high as we can. So
to produce quality. Quality is the key to try to
that's the
overcome
cornerstone of the whole thing.
Yeah.
This is quality, and it has to be, and that's what goes behind who we choose to come on board. And really, it's like, if, you know, nothing goes out the door unless it's kind of got the stamp on it. So that's really key, I think, to differentiate yourself from the next person in anything you do. I think in this, especially in these times, and again back to the topic of relevance, you know, if you've got that quality, and, you know, well, the older guys, we've got a history in the craft of photography and that sort of thing. So it's bringing that to the new age and keeping that as your benchmark is really crucial.
That's gonna
Cool.
take us to time. So thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.